only time I remember my father distinctly is an occasion when my father bought a load of wood for the stove, and had several nails protruding therefrom, and of course I stepped on one, and my mother almost blew him, whatever. She bawled my father so much that he he didn't know what to do with himself. She mentioned that she had lost 3 sons through diphtheria, and she didn't want to lose another one. It's a funny way of starting a interview. And I was then about 4 years old, but I am not quite sure of that. And I'm not quite sure of the time when I returned from Ireland. Now, the I shall be very vague about most of the dates when I am talking about, because I did not know about them, did not know I was going to be called upon to give an interview. And it's of no particular consequence anyway. I'll say about such and such a time. Now, my father was a likable man, but he died, I think, around when I was 4 years old. My mother, at the advice of a lawyer of our acquaintance and relation, suggested that she go to Ireland and visit her mother and put in the time when a case, legal case was coming up, and I think the court calendar was crowded and she might just as well see her mother, which she did. We stayed in Ireland about 2.5 years, I think, because when we intended to come home, my sister Anna broke her leg in such a way that she had to go to the hospital for resetting and so on. And the doctors wanted to cut the leg off, but my mother held out and held out and held out for probably about a year. But anyway, and recovered, we came to back to the States. Well, to get back to myself, while I was in Ireland, I don't know any reason why I shouldn't have gone to school, but I didn't go to school. Maybe the school wasn't didn't carry the small children or whatever, but I did not go to school. I spent most of my time going around with older boys who had gone to school, and they were always looking for a football. The football that we had was from the belly of some animal. It was we blew it up, and that was I used to get at least a halfpenny from. That means a half penny in my collection. Occasionally, I got a whole penny, which was very good, and we could buy a good, a good inside of an animal. But anyway, I should not spend too much time. It's very unimportant. I did see a lot of Ireland because in those days there was no babysitter, and I had to go where all the big folks went, and so I had myself a good time. I saw the Rock of Cashel and the Lakes of Killarney and all the outstanding places. But well, I had a very fine time anyway. I think we arrived home on the ship that was blown up by the Germans in the First World War. But that's of no consequence. We came to live with my mother's uncle and his wife. My wife's uncle is Matthew Heffernan, a leader in temperance, head of a temperance society, who was supposed to have been on his deathbed, and a drink of whiskey would save him, but he said he didn't want any. So he died, and I named my middle name after him. Aunt Mary had already buried her two daughters. I don't know what the cause of the death was, but we went and lived with Aunt Mary and took care of her because she was feeble at that time. The time when we went to Gifford Avenue was, at that time they had no water in the streets, no electricity, and no pavement. The water was by cisterns from the roof, and but soon after, water came to the street, and we put in indoor plumbing and the rest of it. Later, I put in myself, with my own hands, I've put the electrical system in the house, three-story house. And I got coaching from one of the people who worked on electricity, and well, I did it.
How old were you?
I was about 15, I guess. Oh, wait, no. I must have been older than that. I can't think how old I was then. Make it 15. To continue, the house changed a bit. Some additions were made, and it was more comfortable, of course. My activity consisted of all its chores that boys should be doing, bringing in coal and bringing in wood and that kind of thing. But every other minute I could devote to it. I played baseball on the bridge lot. There was a lot below, underneath the then Poughkeepsie Bridge, which was a freight carrying bridge crossing the Hudson River, and the height above the surface was about 85, 80, perhaps 100 feet. I guess it was not that long. Let's call it 80 feet high, and we played tag on the girders. And every time my sisters went by and saw me climbing and playing tag up there, Andrew, we're going to tell Mommy. But anyway, we continued that, and when we weren't doing that, we were playing baseball, and sometimes we would have 2 people on the team, and sometimes 10 on the team. How you fit 10 people, 12 people on the side, where there's only 9 positions, we made it, we did it. We played from, the game started probably around 8 o'clock in the morning and continued until it was dark. Sometimes the ball would be bunch of rag because we couldn't afford to buy regular baseballs. We got through the day. In the evening, we went sometimes we went to somebody's porch and we sang. Sometimes in key and sometimes not. But we sang and all the people around the street liked it because they knew we were not in any mischief at that time. Well, along about I guess I was in the 7th grade, 7th year, when I was 7 years old. I was sent to school against my better wishes because I told my mother I should not go to school because I could not read. She convinced me that that's the place that you should go in order to learn. Well, I was put in the 1st grade, I think, and I don't think I was there more than a month, 2 months before I was put on a 2nd grade. And that was the way I got through grammar school, because every time I get into a grade, the brother, one of the Marriage brothers who was teaching the Andrew, you're coming with me. And I would go into a higher grade. Incidentally, it is probably it should be noted that I got no credit for the books that I handled while I was at my Uncle Mike's meals. His family consisted of 3 children and his wife, and then all of them come to the table reading books.
This is in Ireland.
This is in Ireland before I got into the school in St. Peter's in Poughkeepsie, New York. I got no credit for handling the books. I used to have a book when I went to the dinner table, but I didn't know how to read. However, I looked at the book.
They weren't allowed to talk, they just read? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if that's the correct way of teaching children to keep pushing them along, but that's what they did to me. Incidentally, they were so much enamored with my presence that they wanted me to become a brother in their order, and they did all they could to induce me to adopt their habit and join the order. Had somebody asked me to be a priest, I probably would have been a priest by this time. That's a silly remark.
Now 100 people that are glad you didn't.
Well, okay, shut it off. The church decided they should have something for boys to do, and so they organized what was called the St. Peter's Brigade, and they based on a military the church organized what is known as the St. Peter's Brigade. I said that, but they hired a veteran of the Spanish-American War to teach us military practice and so on. And for some reason or other, they chose me to be the major of the outfit, and I commanded them and taught them all I could learn about military and so on. We met for gymnastics, and we organized a basketball team of which I was a guard, and general, we boys got through the evening and athletic endeavors and all kinds of games that we knew. We also had a number of theatrical productions given by held by the church to raise money for the St. Peter Brigade and the church, as well as the church for other money. And forgive the expression, they would not have been able to do it except for myself, because I was always the interlocutor for the minstrel shows, where the interlocutor would say to Sambo, who was blackened, who was that lady I saw you with last night? And Sambo would say, you know what he said, that is no lady, that is my wife. We did go into serious other theatricals, and at one time I remember playing the Opera House of Poughkeepsie, New York, still in existence, called the still in existence. And I recall looking up and seeing about 4 tiers I say that. I wonder how they heard me on the 4th tier. There were no there was no amplification in those days, or at least we did not know of them. However, I think the plays were a success, and we made money for the church and for the brigade. Another duty of the brigade was to get up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to lead groups of men who are sent overseas in World War I, and we would see them play as loud as we could. Well, we had a band in connection with the movement, you might say, and we probably awakened a lot of people who did not to be awake at that hour. But anyway, we did that. I had a little trouble convincing my mother that I should devote my time while I was first in high school to continuing with the brigade, because I felt, perhaps justly so, that if I stayed away from the brigade, it would collapse. This is what happened. I was there about 2 years, and it seemed like 2 years after graduating from grammar school, it seemed like if I left, they would close the doors on the brigade. That's exactly what happened, and I cannot understand why it should, but those are the facts. I did have work that I was doing. As a matter of fact, I think I can say I worked all my life, starting from grammar school. I was in a clothing store folding pants, and the next year I was in the drugstore delivering drugs. And while I was in college, while I was in school, And while I was out for football, I made the junior team because I was only out for 1 year. And they say it seems like unless I went and did something, nobody else seemed to want to do whatever it is. But speaking of the rest of the high school, I was very busy working at whatever jobs. I couldn't go out for football in my junior year because I couldn't get a job that would permit me to do that. I got a paper route from someone. I went through the usual. It seems like nothing particularly happened to me in this 2 years of high school. When I got out of high school, my mother talked to John E. Mack, who was a famous lawyer of Dutchess County, New York, and who nominated Franklin D. Roosevelt for the first two times he was president. He was a good friend of President Roosevelt, and was called upon at times to work out something for the president. John E. Mack was a distant relative of my mother's, and she asked Mr. Mack for what should Andrew do? And he said, well, why don't we make a survey about him? So I had been reading books, Hardy books, who had for the main figure, the hero of the book, and I cottoned to a man who was in that business, and I said I'd like to become a surveyor. I started, and I became a pretty good assistant to the boss. There were other men who had been there working for him for quite a while, and they seemed to learn nothing. Whereas I worked hard at trying to learn, and I learned the business. And he was he was very happy to have me on his staff. I watched the newspapers and all the civil service things, and learned that there was an examination for engineering assistant in the State Highway Department. I took the exam, and I did very well in it because of what I'd learned in the surveyor's office and so on. And I approached Deluhash and told him that I'd like to take the exam, and I wanted him to sign my reference, and he kind of begrudgingly said, well, let me see it, and he noticed that I had put my age at 18. I was then only 17, and he said, no, I will not sign it. I sincerely hope it was because of honesty and not that he did not like to lose a valuable assistant who was working for hardly anything. Well, anyway, I got the job as engineering assistant, and I was sent to inspect the road in Tarrytown, New York. The way that the state operated at that time, and I think still today, if you're on inspection and away from home, the state will pay for your hotel and all living expenses while you're there. and put you up in a hotel or whatever's handy for them. And the first assignment was for the inspection of the road, as I mentioned, in Harrytown, New York. And I had to pay my own expenses, that is lodging and food and any travel that I might have to do. The on the other hand, if I were on survey, the state would underwrite and put me up in the hotel and pay food, lodging, and so on. While I was on an inspection job, I might tell you, this is one way of learning to play bridge. I had to dig up or find a boarding house, so I went in very close by the road and I knocked on the door and asked if they would put me up, because I was inspector for the state of New York. Would they put me up? And two old ladies came to the door, and one old lady said to the other, nudged her, and I did not know what was going on. And the lady says, no, we don't take boarders. Well, the lady in the back was nudging, and the first lady said, do you play bridge? I said no. And the lady in the back was nudging. I still not what she said, but we could teach him. So I got myself a room, and I got 3 people teaching me to play bridge, which I did for all the time I was there. And it was a very enjoyable time for me. But I soon, however, became very valuable to a man who was the best surveyor the state had, the fastest and the most accurate man, and he had the best people that he could, he had a choice of all the people in the department. The surveys were conducted in the wintertime, and for some reason or other he decided I should go with him beyond the thing. And I think it was the reason that I used to letter very well. I used to make nice numbers on this side of a building or on a tree or something like that to show where the stations of the survey was. And every time he got a job, the first one he picked was myself. And I think it was because of the numbers, not because of the other talents that I might have. But anyway, we did a lot of work around New York City, and he had a quaint notion of how to do a job well and fast. And he would say to us, if there was a job that he thought would take 6 days, he said, if you do this in 4, I'll give you a day off. So that means we could go anywhere, and he'd give us the hotel bill and anything else, and we could go and see shows in New York, and that was a great education for me, since I was going around with college men who happened to be very decent people, but the youngster, traveled with them, and we had a great time, and we did excellent work very fast and very accurately.
How old would you say you were?
I had with
Okay. How old?
I was 17 years old, I claimed to be 18 in order to comply with the rules and regulations. Some of the problems I have in relating these things that I have done and accomplishments, I say to myself, nobody could do all this in a short lifetime, but I was there. However, things did not last too long because another exam came up. I took the exam, made out very well, was appointed to a higher position, more money and so on, but confined to the office where I did small bridges, design, and so on. Then another exam came up, and I passed that with flying colors. That was for assistant engineer. Assistant engineer is one of the higher positions of the department, and I expected to be appointed to the position of assistant engineer. The man who was in charge, the chief engineer, said, "Andy, I can't appoint you as assistant engineer. You're too young." He said, even though you are graduated from college, you haven't had the experience that the men around here have had for years and years, and they're a lot older than you are, but the fact that they can't pass examinations is a deterrent, of course, but they would get mad with me. I kept at him and at him, and then finally he appointed me assistant engineer, and he told me to go build a bridge across the Rondout Creek, Kingston, New York. So I set upon, I was living at home and drove from Poughkeepsie to near Kingston and started a bridge and worked, did my job and was very happy with it and so on, until we got to the other side and we decided we had to build an abutment, and we were supposed to build the abutment on rock. The rock was it appeared right on the surface on the first abutment we did, and but we didn't see any rock over there. And we started digging, and we digging with a backhoe. We got down about 30 feet. We found no rock. I called the office and I said, "Hey, send out a boring machine, and we got to go down and find out where the rock is." They sent, the boring machine was a tripod with a 200-pound weight, and I said, "Where's the engine, the motor?" "Oh, you got to hire 4 farmers to lift by pulling over a pulley and let the thing bang on the pipe that we were driving down to find out where the rock is." We got down about 72 feet. We couldn't, even no matter how fast the men dropped the weight, couldn't go any farther. So I said, "We got to do piles." So they had to put it. It takes a little while to get started in the design, so I had nothing to do. I had nothing to do but roam around the countryside and see what's going on. And while I was going to work every morning, I'd see a man taking a load, piling manure on very neat piles, rectangular in plan and height of about 4 feet. And he'd take the one that he had done yesterday and put it somewhere else. I said to myself, that man must be crazy. But he wasn't. He was doing mushrooms in an abandoned cave. And I said to him, what are you doing that for? He said, if I told you what I'm doing this for, you'd know as much as I do. And I don't want you to know that much. So I said, I'll fool him. I will go into a library and learn how to raise mushrooms. I found one thing out, that the way he found out, this was an eminent author of mushroom growing. Only way you can tell mushrooms are poisonous when you eat one. If you don't get sick, then you advertise this is okay to eat, and eat them from then on.
Right.
As an aside, when I was in Ireland, I went with my grandmother and we picked some mushrooms out in the fields. And when I came to the States and to Poughkeepsie, we had a very good backyard, and I decided I was going to pick the mushrooms from our backyard, and I'd just fry them the way I saw the people in Ireland do it. So Catherine and I had a good feast of the mushrooms.
What happened?
My mother almost died. The whole neighborhood was up and doing something. They called a few doctors. It was a crisis.
Yes.
When we said it tasted pretty good, nothing happened. On that job, we had a few troubles. Of course, we managed to work the troubles out. However, we were ready to pour an abutment on about the 29th of December. What year? 1929, I believe, or 1930. And during the night, a storm came, washed out all the forms that they'd spent about a month preparing. And maybe it was the 27th of December. They asked what to do. I said, go ahead, build it. What to do? What else? Go ahead, you got to do it again. Now, they finished completing the form work. It was a lot of trouble, but they completed the form work on the 31st of January, and they said, okay, boss. They didn't. I wasn't their boss. I was the engineer. But they said, okay, boss, what do we do? I said, well, we pour. Do you know what day tomorrow is? Do I know what day tomorrow is? My wife-to-be was visiting my parent, and she never was in Poughkeepsie before, and I said, "we poor." That meant I had to work. She has never forgiven me for that. But anyway, thought you might like to know that. My wife, my wife to be, and my dear wife who was passed on 6 years ago, had to play pinochle with very old people all day long, and as I say, she probably never forgave me. Soon after the troubles, I made the decision that the work should go on as long as we were prepared, because in the event of another storm we would lose the work that we had done. The day came, we continued, we poured the concrete. It was not a very nice day, but the day after was a beautiful day. And here I was, getting the dislike of the men who had to work on New Year's Day, and also the appreciation that my wife had for me, because she had to spend the day on pinochle. Okay. I never finished the job because another exam had been taken, and I scored on it very well, and so I received a job from the Westchester County Park Commission, more money and so on, and that was soon after. I changed jobs the day I got married, which was June 29th, 1929, and moved to what I thought was New York City, and 262nd Street, across the street from
Cortlandt?
Van Cortlandt Park, and joined a new group of men who were designing parkway bridges and other bridges. And I got along nicely with us and a couple of other men who had graduated from Union College, which is the college I graduated from in 1927. And we got along fine, very easily mixed with the people there, and played golf on the commission's time, and played on several courses. We have, I think, Friday afternoon off, every Friday afternoon off, where we could go play golf. I think the job lasted about 2 years, during which time I had the birth of my son, Gregory, occurred, and he had a tough passage, and that was on Friday the 13th. Almost lost him because of contracted with the erysipelas, and the erysipelas had him between life and death for quite a long time. However, he recovered, and at the time that my daughter, Doris, was born, that's at the same time. Well, to continue on with the housing situation, it was a very darling place that we had rented with a fireplace and so on, that was built to keep people out of the house because it smoked and smoked and smoked. And
I don't understand.
the fireplace smoked so much that people would start to cry in about 15 or 20 minutes. And they said, if you ever light that thing again when we're here, you'll never see us again. The job came to a close. The thought of civil service, what is good about civil service is it's steady and you can depend upon it. However, this was the time when the great the Depression had started at about that time for everything, including civil service, and the group, the Westchester County Park Commission had to cease operation because of the the Depression forced all kinds of activities to be abandoned, including the laying off or the firing of the group that I was with. And then came the period when everyone who could left his house to go live with parents or that, and we had no parents. I had a struggle to get to stay alive. The American Society of Civil Engineer, of which I had been a member for some time, hired me for $25 a week if I used my car to try to help poor engineers who are worse off than I. There weren't too many who were worse off, but I was able to find some organizations that would supply food and supply medicine and so on, and I got praise for my efforts, and they were happy that I was doing it. Something happened in the national picture. Mr. Roosevelt decided he would make a thing called the Mr. Roosevelt, then president, decided to start the WPA, and he hired Mr. Moses of the ARC to put on a program of parks, the like of which had never been heard of. In this, I was asked by somebody who came from Moses, Andy, you should go to the ARC and set up a topographical outfit. I said, what do I want to do that for? Do what you're asked to do. Go set up this topographical. I said, all right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go down and I'll advise the people how to do it. But I don't know if I'm going to do it, because by this time, the Park Commission had set up a group of designers, and I had 8 men working for me designing bridges. And I said, I'm happy here. I got a group, and I can teach them enough so that when we get money to build, we'll be ready. But Andy, I don't know anybody else. You're the only guy that I know has got enough guts, enough on the ball to go ahead and pull this together. I said, look, I'll join you. I'll see you Monday or something like. See you Monday, and give me a few pointers. She says, I don't know any pointers to give you. And I said, well, tell me something. So I went down there and we had a short conference. I think I told you the other day where it was. Don't you remember?
Conference.
The other conference I had with him, we were in the men's room, and he was in one place, and we were talking through a door, and that was my instructions. I decided that nobody knew what was going on, so I said to myself, I am the boss. So from then on, I was the chief topographical engineer of the Department of Parks, and I think I had 6 men that I appointed, and from that 6 men, I made surveys all over the United States, city of New York. There are 250 parks and park areas in the city of New York, and I was to survey every single one of them, and some of them were acres and acres and acres, and that was Central Park, it was a big place. And I set up the place. I did a few sharp tricks where somebody had some transits, somebody had some levels, somebody had some tapes. I said, I signed for everything. I had no authority for anything at all, but I heard a guy say, well, if you get A.M. Anderson's signature on it, it's a perfect job. And I said, gee, who was this A.M. Anderson who was so wealthy and so on his signature and gets thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Well, anyway, the thing got up to 1,057 men working under me. And I had a great time. I enjoyed myself. I worked awfully hard. And
What year is this about?
1932. Take it off. The work with the Park Department included from 1930 to about 1946, which included the end of the WPA work and the resumption of normal work of a Park Department, of which I became the chief designing engineer with landscape architects, mechanical engineers, and the whole design outfit. Then somebody goes bad on who was running. Who was the borough director of Staten Island, who went bad, and they shifted all the people who were qualified to do that work, and I was shifted to Staten Island. And I enjoyed Staten Island and so on. But before I get off the subject of the chief designing engineers, we designed the area for the first the 39 World's Fair. The World's Fair is built upon swamps, and in order to get the fill for filling up the place and make it so it was usable, we moved the so-called Corona dumps, which had been a garbage dump for must be 100 years, and we moved all that. We moved that stuff over, filled the Flushing Meadow Park, and a very strange thing. Perhaps it would be difficult to understand, but the mounds of the trash are very high, and they had been there a long time, and they had been burning internally, so that we thought we had so much material to deal with, but we didn't because of the holes in the mountain of trash. So we had to make bigger lakes. In other words, we couldn't fill all the area that we could have used for the World's Fair, but we didn't have the fill, and so every once in a while somebody say, "Andy, we gotta make the lakes bigger." I said, "All right, come on." Can't do anything else. But we take great pride in the job that we did in preparing for the World's Fair and so on. We had the inspection of the buildings that were to remain and the swimming pool that was to remain. But aside from that, the buildings for the World Fair itself, we had practically nothing to do with.
And what World's Fair was that?
That was 1939.
Right.
Okay. Building a fair was somewhat complicated because of the fact that we had to dam the Flushing River. That called for the building a tide gate and dam to make sure that we wouldn't overflow, or we would not let the lake go dry. But anyway, we solved that, and of course there were other problems that occupied my attention at this phase of my career. The thing that was bothering me, or what I worried about, was the bridge going over the Spite and Dival, the Harlem River Ship Canal, and we were building an arch to continue the part that was left out of the Henry Hudson Parkway. By the way, this bridge would be a great site for watching the Columbia University football game, because we are right practically on top of it. But my two phases of the bridge were the inspection of the bridge being built itself, but making sure that the two sides met in the middle of the river. Of course, the bridge was built from the north side and then from the south side, and of course they should get together. I spent a lot of time and hounded the men that I had assigned to the job, and they were a little bit annoyed that I thought they couldn't do the job, but I was so anxious to make sure that the bridge would close. It so happened to close within about 2/16 or a quarter of an inch, and I was very happy and relieved. Back on the World's Fair, 39, the city was providing a parking lot for cars and so on, and we were supposed to finish the parking lot on the day the fair opened. We had been meeting with the police for discussing what to do with the traffic that we expected on the first day. However, the traffic was light, and whatever worries we had, we forgot them because not enough people showed up to give us trouble. But we started thinking about cars from Kingston, New York, and so on, and trying to determine what effect they would have on the regular traffic in New York City. My family certainly enjoyed the fair because we went to it several times. And very often somebody like the Ford automobile company would throw a party, and my wife was, of course, invited. And she was carrying Philip at the time. She enjoyed the parties, but we didn't ask Philip at that time how he liked it. Uncle Donald, just to make sure that he's mentioned, was Donald enjoyed the fair too. But he was very early age, but he saw quite a bit of the fair. Okay. About 1940, the condition of the world improved, and it was time to cut back on the WPA activities. That was done slowly and in a way not to completely disrupt all the people who had contributed mightily to the great adventure that Mr. Delano Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt did for, let's say, saving the country from whatever problem would have existed if he hadn't shown initiative in putting all the people to work. The large group of men that I've had slowly were eased out of the system, and the Department of Parks became what a park department should do by cutting down on all the unnecessary personnel and so on. In order to do that, I was appointed as chief designing engineer of the department and had under me about 100 people who were mechanical engineers, civil engineers, landscape architects, and so on, to carry on the business of the park system. We did not do anything outstanding. That I recall, however, there was we had the opening of we had to redo the swimming pool at Flushing Meadow Park, the site of the World's Fair, for its use as a public department. I recall when we reopened the pool that had been used in the World's Fair, and we fixed it for the public use. I recall we were invited to a party, and I saw a young man who apparently didn't know anybody in the group, and I took it upon myself to make him welcome. I thought he was a chauffeur for one of the people, and as I walked with him towards a group of people that I knew, I said, "This is so-and-so and so-and-so," and said to this man, "I didn't get your name," and tell me, "Well, I'm Lawrence Rockefeller." And I think Lawrence went on to become a governor or one of them, whatever. I thought it was very nice of me to take pity on the poor fellow. But, in other words, the park system became what is ordinarily a park system, and most of the work became maintenance and keeping the place in order. Myself, for some reason or other, was appointed a representative to find places for the Army during World War II. I was appointed in the committee for USO, and the five of us, John Ray, former chief attorney for AT&T, and Roddy Coles, president of the Staten Island Institute of Arts and Science, of which I became a member. I became vice president. And Ernie Jansen bought real estate and set up a very fine dance hall for the soldiers to entertain themselves and be entertained by the community. And it was organized under the USO auspices. Besides those two activities, I had somewhat of a normal existence with my home life and so on, and kept regular hours until about 1946, when I decided I wanted a change of pace, and I was looking for more salary, which was not coming because of civil service rules. I passed an examination that was United States wide for somebody to resurrect the park system of Baltimore, Maryland. I was second on the list, and I was offered a job, and so my large family got into a car and away we went to Baltimore, where we occupied, which was part of the job, a tremendously large burglar mansion that had 28 toilets in it, because it was served as a the basement of which served as a tennis quarters. But I asked that they discontinue that use for my family, which they did. I didn't last very long in Baltimore for the reason that I could not understand how they could get away with the doings of handling the money with on contracts and so on, and I decided I could not live with them and asked for the release. However, I was there long enough to design a park, which is now operating, and nobody seemed to take an interest in the zoo that the park system ran, if you call it that. There were 12 cages, and each one had at least one lion in it, and nothing else. I decided I was going to do something about the thing, and I got permission from the board to sell the lions, and I sent them above. I paid for them, sent them to I sold I sold 10 lions to a collector of, or a supplier of wild animals to museums. The loading of these animals was of great interest to me, particularly when I was very nervous about shipping lions or handling them anyway. Most people never get the opportunity of dealing in animals of any description in that particular capacity. And thinking about the shipping of the lions, I worried about one of them escaping and possibly mutilating the crowd that might be around. And so I asked somebody to tell me or see if you could get me a lion tamer to come in. I'll pay him for his surveillance of the lions while they were being shipped. Well, a very quiet-looking man showed up, and I asked him if he hunted lions, and he said, "Oh, I certainly did." I said, "Did you ever shoot any?" He said, "Oh, sure, I shot a lot of them." And I said, "Have you got a gun?" He said, "Oh, yeah." And he says, I don't know what caliber, maybe it was 30-30 or something like that. And I said, "Well, you come to the station, the railroad station in Baltimore on the night of the shipping date, and you be ready. If any of them gets out, you blast them, kill, whatever it is. Don't let them get near the public." I said, "Be unobtrusive about this." And he said, "Well, of course." So I got down there the night we were shipping the stuff, and he was walking up and down with a safari hat on, shorts on, and a great big blunderbuss in his hand. I said, "Oh my goodness." Anyway, the lions got off. We put two in the cage, two in a case. Was metal pipe sides, and I was told not to feed them, and they arrived in good shape in Jamestown. About 3 days after, the man got on the phone and said, I said very nervously, "What's the matter?" He said, "Oh, nothing's the matter." He said, "The lions arrived in very good shape, and we appreciate that." He said, "Do you want them back?" And I said, "What?" Apparently, he didn't realize it, but the city council of Jamestown had ruled out that they were not allowed to have any more wild animal people selling stuff and selling animals and so on. What a relief. But anyway, I got um, some of the problems that I had with the powers that be at the park department were the swimming pools that were fill and draw. No effort made to put any um, um, no effort made to chlorinate the very large pools, and I was I made the accusation that that there must have been very much disease circulated to the people who used the pools. As a matter of fact, I was called in, or I sought an interview with the mayor, Theodore Roosevelt McKeldin, the only Republican that was ever elected in Baltimore. And he brought in the head of health man, and we had a discussion. I said, how many diseases do you think the people have contracted because of drinking water, swimming in water that tests higher than pure urine when it tested? Well, we have no history of that any disease that was contracted by the pools. I said, well, there must be some. And I lost the argument that we should build new pools. And Governor McKeldin said, well, first, we don't have the money for it, but we will see what we can do about it. I tried very rudimentary methods by having a robot run around with a chlorinated material, hopefully to do something, but the odds were against me. Besides, I couldn't get permission to buy whatever chlorine was necessary. I was very happy to get out of the job at Baltimore because we could not see the way to handle money, and I decided I was better off going somewhere else to work. I returned to New York and got a job with the New York City Housing Authority, in which I was, of course, in charge of a phase like determining all the utilities, how the utilities and how to work with the utility companies to smooth out how and when to build the services for the houses. I was also saddled with the running of the landscape department of the Housing Authority, and we did work for every housing department had lawns and pavement and so on, and we did all of that, and I was very happy doing that work, very happy, until the man who was running Niagara Falls apparently wasn't doing the way he should have been doing, and Mr. Moses said we better change, and so we'll send Andy up there. I demurred, not particularly to him, but I demurred a little bit because my family had been moved around very, very much. And I thought we might try to get settled. However, Mr. Moses was a very fine friend of mine, and I said, all right, we'll move. We arrived in Niagara Falls, and the place looked a mess. And it took a little while, and we straightened that out. Okay. After a while, the place started to look like it should, and time went on, and I was very happy to visit some of the famous people who came to from the White House and sent them to see the falls and asked me to show them around, which I did, and that was lots of fun. It was lots of fun providing friends of mine with places on the line that they wouldn't have had unless they knew me, and so on. That was very nice. And in particular, I like to show people the falls themselves, but I was very interested in the I was very interested in showing people the Carillon, which is, as you know, a building very tall and in Canada contains 75 bells. The biggest one is about 15 tons, and it's about my height. And the clapper is 300 pounds, and the Caroliner, the player of the thing, has to hit rods that come out, and the rod, by the man's or lady's pressure, hits the thing, and the clapper hits the side of the big or little bell. Incidentally, the smallest one is about 8 inches tall, an itty-bitty one compared to the 15-ton. But one of the visitors was one of the visitors was Theodore Roosevelt McKeldin, the then governor of Maryland, and he brought with him Clara, and I brought with me Doris, and I said to Clara, here, play the theme song of the state of Maryland. And I said, like this, Maryland, my Maryland. And he said, she doesn't know that. And I said, well, play something. She played the Tennessee Waltz, which is a good thing. Well, why? Here's the governor of the state of New York, state of Maryland, who doesn't know the state song. We had a repetition of that with Soapy Williams. Soapy Williams is the governor of Michigan. Soapy because he founded the great soap company of shaving cream and that kind of thing. And he had with him he had his wife and 2 children. And I started to tell him about Governor Maryland's child not knowing the state song, and Mrs. Williams is nudging me, trying to stop me, because her kids did not know the state song of Michigan either. So anyway, all my children played at one time the carillon. Greg played a Marine hymn. Philip played Mary Had a Little Lamb. I've forgotten what Alan played, and I don't remember what Lars played, but I'm not too sure if any of them knows the state song of New York. Sometime I'll ask them. The falls themselves behaved very well while I was there, except for the short time before I left. Half of the falls fell apart, and somebody accused me of putting my foot down too heavily, and I was to blame for it. I had a bad time at that time because I was supposed to give the New York Times and all the famous newspapers, some foreign ones, something to tell them about the falls. And I came up with the idea that sooner or later, like about 3,000 years, the falls would disappear. There will be no more falls. It will be just like the rapids that are there now. And I made a remark to one of the reporters, sooner or later, how long, what do you estimate is the time when the falls will have disappeared? I said 3,000 years. And if you are around at that time, you can check on it. That's the outfit in Niagara Falls that was assembling I was very happy to make use of the helicopters that were furnished to me for me to make a close inspection of the face of the falls to determine if I could, from that position, if there was more falls expected. The man who was the pilot of the helicopter was a very careful man, and I kept saying, I want to go closer and closer to the top of the falls because I can't see what I want to see. And he said, wait a minute. You know, if this engine conks out, this has got to get to shore. And I can't do it from the position that you want to get me in. So I said, well, that's, okay, I understand his reasoning, and so I said, well, thank you, and so it will go up. Following this up, one day I went walking around the park, as I usually did, and I come across a helicopter on Goat Island. I said, who got permission from me to go on the island? Look, he was in a hurry, and the pilot knew the man, and he had to get to Niagara Falls in a hurry, and so he hopped in the best place he could land, which Goat Island. I bawled him out so much. I said, the next time you do anything like this, I'll just put you right in the jail. And I had 20 cops under me, and I could arrest anybody. And he said, oh, look, I won't do this again. He was in the National Guard. And I think his name was Scott. And, no, his name was Anderson, the pilot. And I said, while you're here, you might just as well do a little chore for me, and so I got in the hut and went to look at the face of the falls, and we practically could touch the water. We got so close. And I was telling the story about the man being very careful, and then here's another man, and I said his name was Anderson, and the guy said, "Oh yeah, he's been cracked up at least 5 times." I said, "Ah!" So I will not do business with him anymore. I'll just put him in jail. And speaking of other activities, there was an orchestra or a band made up of employees of the. I got into a little trouble with the unions of New York State for the reason that I encouraged and set up a series of band concerts on the edge of the falls. These were done, the music was excellent, somewhat amateurish, but pleasant, and we had some good crowds. Of course, that was at no charge for admission and so on. The trouble was the musicians union of Niagara Falls objected to my having the free concerts, and I had to stop them. It reminds me that when I was in Staten Island, before I got to the falls, I had band concerts for free, and the same thing happened. The union musicians got after the mayor, and the mayor told me to stop. I think that was a shame, because I enjoyed the music and everybody else did, and we had nothing in our budget to pay for any concerts at all. I also got in trouble when I was converting the existing electrical system to the I made it the system alternating in the whole system, whole Niagara Falls itself, except the elevators. The existing system that's used in elevators work more efficient than the ordinary alternating system. Okay. The governor's office was asked to have me stopped from doing anything like that. I was not supposed to be doing that. A small, gruesome detail might be in order here. I had reason to look over dead bodies as they came over the falls and direct my men what to do with them. I got into a little trouble with the newspaper of Niagara Falls because they wanted to put all suicides on the front page. Well, I would rather see them on a 3rd page or 5th, because I claim that there's some nuts might be encouraged to do away with themselves, but for the notoriety that they would establish and so on. One time I was called by the men. I was home on Sunday, and they said, "Mr. Anderson, there's a body at the foot of the falls." And I said, "All right, just a minute, I'll be there." Alan happened to be dressed in his Sunday clothes, and I said, "Alan, you may come, see if we can find a dead body," and so on. And we disposed of the body and we went home. Sometime later, I was trying to remember what day something happened, and we had company. I was telling some kind of a story that had to do with when we did what, and Alan blurted out, "Oh, Andy, that was the day we went body snatching." And I said, "Well, that is not a good thing to bring up, Alan." And he didn't think that he deserved the bawling out because he remembered. I enjoyed the job at Niagara Falls quite a bit, but at that time I had 3 people in college, and I needed more money, and I was offered a job in New York for a business getter for engineering, and so I got Mr. Moses' permission to take the job, and I arrived back in Staten Island and went to work trying to dig up work for the engineers that I was assigned, that I was working for. In 1958, whether you know it or not, there was quite a lowering of engineering jobs, and I had to find something else to do, and I decided I was going to work in going to work for